The biggest thing you gave me was time.
I've always been a proponent of do the job, do it well.
When you're a family, everyone in the family has to be treated with respect.
Coach Wooden, it always started with relationships. It always started with coaching people's hearts.
I want to know who you really are, right? You can put whatever you want on paper, but that doesn't really matter.
His teachers, they meet the learner wherever he is.
They don't care what you know.
They won't. So they know how much you care.
Be aggressive. That's win. Here we go.
At this moment, we are so blessed to have Coach Chris Klieman on the show, using another podcast word, show. This man has won 30 wins while at K-State and has taken the team to the first conference title since 2012 here this season. The team finished number 9 in the final college football playoff rankings, which was K-State's highest ever in the final college football playoff rankings. Had 3 victories over top 10 teams in 2022. And overall, Coach Klieman, I don't know if you even keep up, but your record is 102-33 with a 76% winning percentage. And that ranks you 4th. I know you've heard that before, but that ranks you 4th amongst active coaches. And that's just a little bit of tooting your horn, again, because I know I never heard you toot your own, but sometimes it does the body good to hear, man, you're doing a pretty good job.
Well, thank you. That's kind of neat.
No, I won't say that again, right? I won't say that again. But again, sometimes you got to do that. But we'll jump right in. And my first question is, because I'm with you every day, but and I've heard it a couple times, but I think it'd be great for you to share your journey, to talk to us about this journey for you to become the head coach at Kansas State University.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a unique journey. I was fortunate. I played at Northern Iowa, and when I graduated, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was one of those guys that I wasn't good enough to play in the NFL. I loved football, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And Bob Bowlesby was the athletic director at Northern Iowa at the time. And Bob recently retired from the Big 12 commissioner. And Bob said, I think you should coach. And so between he and Terry Allen, I got in as a graduate assistant and was at Northern Iowa for a few years, and then got a break and got my first full-time job at Western Illinois. That's where I met Brian Anderson, and or had been around Brian. I played with his brother Kevin at Northern Iowa, but I got around Brian quite a bit, and was there for 3 seasons, and wanted to continue to grow. I was young and just kept making different stops. My wife was all on board. She knew me as a grad assistant, so she said, "Okay, I'm ready to take this journey." And we went all over the place to Kansas, to Missouri State, which at that time was Southwest Missouri State, to getting out of coaching even for a year and a half actually, to a Division III job at Loras College. Still friends with the president today at Loras. To back to Northern Iowa, to an opportunity at North Dakota State with Coach Bull, who you know well.
Yes.
And we caught fire there. And credit to Coach Bull and the staff that he had put in place. And I was able to join that staff. And we won 3 national championships in my 3 years that I was there as his assistant coach, 2 as the defensive coordinator, one as a secondary coach. And I mean, it was like crazy how fast this went that we rose and won it in 11, 12, and 13. And then he got the job at the University of Wyoming. And my first thought was, I'm going to Wyoming to be the defensive coordinator. And I left cold at Fargo, and I don't know how much warmer Laramie was going to be. But I remember coming home and sitting with my wife and kids, and my kids were pretty young then in 2013. And I said, I guess we're going to Laramie. My kids were crushed. They really enjoyed Fargo, and they were crushed. They just didn't want to go. So my wife said, I think you better have a conversation with the athletic director, Gene Taylor, and see if you can get in the race there for the head job. And was able to do that, and was able to land the head job at North Dakota State. And Gene said, all you got to do is keep winning and nobody will say anything. You just got to keep winning. Well, then Gene left to go to the University of Iowa before I coached a game with him. And so we were there 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. Those 5 seasons, we were fortunate. We won 4 national championships in those 5 seasons. And the year we didn't win, we beat Iowa at the University of Iowa and lost in the semifinals. And it was the most crushing offseason I'd ever had.
Yeah.
But then Coach Snyder retired from Kansas State, and Gene called and offered me a chance to interview, and interviewed and took the job in 2019. And it shocks me to think that we're going in together into year 5, but it's been quite a journey, and I've learned every step of the way more and more each year.
Yeah, and I totally agree. So we talk as a staff quite a bit about our core values, and I know those core values are important to you. Explain your core values, the core values of our program, and then how do they go into developing leadership on your team?
Well, our core values of discipline, commitment, toughness, and selfless, and to be selfless. We as a staff with our leadership council decided on those after the pandemic year, and everybody struggled in that pandemic year. There's not a program that went totally unscathed, and you were a big part of this process of us developing these core values, because we needed to change the locker room. We needed to change the culture, because we didn't see these kids for a better part of 6-8 months, other than on Zoom and at a game. And we came up with those 4 core values, and everything that we do in our program, from athletic training to nutrition to strength and conditioning to academics to community service, has those 4 core values in mind of discipline, commitment, toughness, and to be selfless. And our good friend Tremaine Carroll holds those kids accountable every day to those 4 core values in the weight room. And I like how whenever we have conversations with our players, they bring up those 4 core values, and they become a fabric of what Kansas State football is. And you throw a glass of water on Van Malone and say, you tell me those 4 core values in 3 seconds, and we throw the glass of water, you're going to name them off, boom, boom, boom. Right. And our kids totally believe in those, and those core values and how we live our life on a daily basis, and those core values in everything we do. And discipline is the first one we talk about, and it's the way you do one thing is the way you do everything, and that's on and off the field. And I think both of us agree that those core values are what led to this turnaround and led to us winning a Big 12 championship.
And you ended with that, and that is, over the course of these months since the championship, I've had a lot of people, they've congratulated us on a great season, but I always refer back to number one, to those moments that you spoke of, those rough moments, but then how important really actually how enjoyable, how cool it's been to watch our team through those core values develop into a championship team. And when I was on that field after that ball sailed through the uprights, I thought about that. I thought about how our team has grown. I thought about, again, those rough moments and some of the players who didn't make it there with us, but I thought about the kids who did, and I thought about where we as a staff, where I've had the fortune of watching you grow, but more importantly, our team and our leadership grow because of us instituting those core values and building everything we do around that.
I think a lot of people don't realize, Van, that if we don't have the struggles that we did in 2020, I don't think we win that Big 12 championship. And I don't think the struggles that Will Howard had, or Ty Zentner, or Daniel Green, or KT Levinston, or whomever else, if they don't have those struggles and realize what a gift it was to be at Kansas State, and for those guys to take ownership in that program with those core values at the front of their mind, I don't think we win that without the struggles we had. Yes.
And again, everyone sees the end product, right? But it's the process. It's the process that we as staff, that our team has gone through to be able to be able to reach that point. My next question is, and actually it's been cool because I've had the opportunity to have some of the people who you would consider leaders in your life. I've had the opportunity to have some of those people on this show. But the question is in your life as a coach, as a man, who have been the greatest leaders in your life, and what are some of the lessons that they've taught you along the way?
Well, the best leader I've had is my father, who was a coach, who instilled in me a mental toughness, that when you get knocked down, you get back up every day, and don't worry about your circumstances, control what you can control. And that's your effort and attitude every day. And I take that with me in everything that I do. I was just fortunate to be around parents that cared for me, loved me, and challenged the heck out of me. But as I've gotten into my professional career over the last 8 years, the biggest leader that I lean on is Ben Newman. Ben's not a coach. He's not a former player, but he's been the most instrumental person in my life that has helped me through the most difficult times. And whether it's a conversation, a quick text, a word that he's always got my back, that he's always going to help us in everything that we do and help these kids reach their peak and reach their goals. He's been one of the best leaders that I've been around. And then, you think of ADs and coaches I've been around. I've learned the most from our players. Mm-hmm. I've learned the most from a kid like Darius Shepard at North Dakota State, or Trey Dempsey or Easton Stick at North Dakota State, to Skylar Thompson, to Briley Moore, to Daniel Green, to Deuce Vaughn, to Denzel Goolsby, to Will Howard and Noah Johnson. Those are the ones you learn from, because you see them every day and you see them battling, and you see those guys take the ownership to lead the program. And we always talk about holding each other accountable to a standard. And if the leaders won't hold themselves to that standard, how can they ask anybody else to do the same? And we've been fortunate here over the last few years to have some phenomenal leaders that have held themselves and their peers to a high standard.
Yeah. And I think, to that point, each of those players that you mentioned, they have had challenges and they've overcome those challenges. Some of those players have had to mature to become those leaders that you spoke of, but it's just been really cool to watch them to be able to ascend to that place. And I think, at Kansas State, we've done a good job, I think, of putting those players in the positions to develop that leadership. So now let me shift gears just a little bit. Over the years, you've had the opportunity, I call it opportunity, to hire coaches, to add people to your staff, coaches and support personnel. When looking to make these hires, what are the things you look at to identify people that you want to bring onto your team?
Well, it's easy to say the 4 core values for starters, but everybody needs to have the discipline, commitment, toughness, selflessness to be a part of a staff. But I always look at our collective staff that we have and think, I want to add somebody that brings something different to the table. I don't want another Buddy Wyatt or another Van Malone or another Connor Riley. I want somebody that's going to bring something different, somebody that's got a different view, a different vibe to them. And so that's the first thing I look for, is what can somebody add to us? I mean, we all as coaches, myself, yourself included, are still learning from everybody. And so that's the first thing I would say. And then the second thing is, the relationships. Can they build those with kids? Everybody's a good football coach in this business. There's a ton of great football coaches, but who can mold and mentor, challenge, and most importantly, and this word gets probably not used enough in our business, who can love those kids the most? When it's a tough time, who's going to be there for those kids when they have a grandfather pass away, or something happens and they can't afford rent, or they can't get a ride, or they're screwing up and they're late for different things. It's easy to chastise somebody, but who can who can put their arm around somebody and say, you know what, you're struggling. How can I help you? Because those are the guys that are going to go through a wall for you on Saturday. The ones that you love and the ones that you challenge, but they know you got that you have their back. And so I'm looking for guys like that. And, you know, I look at our staff right now, and we've got all sorts of different personalities, and you and I chuckle and laugh at all the different personalities we have. But in a foxhole with a kid, all of our coaches would go in there with their players and those kids and battle for them.
Right. We've spoken a little bit about adversity. And man, again, when we think about where we are as a team, it's easy to laugh. But I remember some of these adversities when you even talk about COVID and the protocols, wearing the mask, and wait a minute, so-and-so may not be available this week.
Yeah.
Well, just at practice yesterday, even this morning, he rode on the bus. He can't play now. You know, those things, those adversities. How has the adversity of the last few years, how has that made you a better leader?
Well, when you have adversity, the one thing that is easy to do is find the blame. I think that's what people want to do. Man, that we were awful on defense. That's Van Malone's fault. Or we were awful here. That's so-and-so's fault. Or that was the terrible play calling, whatever. I think when adversity strikes, you better look in the mirror. You better look at yourself first. And I know that I have done that on a number of occasions. And you and I have so many conversations in my office, some really difficult conversations. And every adversity that we have, I go back and think about and say, how did I handle that? Maybe I was too hard on that person. Maybe I didn't show enough compassion. Maybe I wasn't hard enough on somebody. I don't know, but I always try to value and look myself in the mirror to say, okay, that adversity struck. You're in charge of this whole thing. You're in charge of this whole thing. So if we weren't very good, or we screwed up off the field, we weren't good academically, we didn't do enough community service, or we just didn't win a game, you better look at yourself. And the best leaders, I think, are the ones that cast blame on themselves and say, I've got to be better first. And then it's easier to say, okay, I think collectively as a staff, we can be better, but this is on me, why we weren't successful. And, you know, I felt that way after we lost to Texas late in the season, but I knew those kids were still bought in, and I knew those kids in that locker room were so locked in. I'm like, we're going to go on the road, and we're going to get back in this league race. And sure enough, we go to Baylor and go to West Virginia and get huge wins because those kids never wavered.
Yeah. Well, you spoke on the difficult conversations, and for me, you know, to work alongside you, to learn from you, it's been right really cool to be able to see you in action when you have, as a leader, those difficult conversations, be it a conversation with a player or a conversation with a member of our staff. I always value that part of it, because to be the leader and to have that conversation, man, I'm sometimes thinking to myself, how is he going to handle this one? You know, and then when I see you go through that process, again, each time it's been an incredible learning experience for me. So as I continue on, how important is it for you as a leader, as a head coach? How important is it for you to develop your staff members, your coaches, to be able to make that next step in their careers, you know, for whatever it might be, to be a head coach, to be a coordinator? How important is that for you as a head coach?
It's very important. The one thing that I pride myself on and hope that our staff understands and believes is I'm not a micromanager. I'm going to let guys coach. You hire them, let them coach. Yeah, there's some things that you want done a specific way, or there's some things that you think, a drill that needs to be done, a technique that needs to be done that you want to encourage. But you got to give them ownership, and you got to let them be themselves. You got to let them coach, and they're going to have success and they're going to have failures, especially the young coaches that are learning their way through. But I think it's so valuable for guys to network, and you've done a phenomenal job of this your whole coaching career. You know so many people because you're going to get out there and go to conventions and go to coaches clinics and meet new people, and not wait for somebody to say, hey, you're Van Malone. You go up and say, hey, I'm Coach Malone. What's your name? How can I help you? Especially the younger people in our profession. And so when we have coaches that come to me and say, hey, I have an opportunity to interview at place X, Y, or Z. I don't know if I'm interested. I don't know if I want to move my family. What do you think? The first thing I tell them is interview. You have to take those experiences. Those things are so hard to get, and you can do mock interviews and stuff all you want, but you need to get interviews and talk and express yourself and get that experience. And if it doesn't go well and you don't get the job, or it goes really well and you don't get the job, you're going to be better for the experience. And oftentimes, I know that people will reach out, and I've interviewed some people that we've gone in another direction that they've reached back out, say, hey, coach, what can I do to improve? And we don't probably give enough feedback when we don't get a job. We just move on with life. And I would encourage, if somebody interviews for a job, write that person a letter and stay in contact with them, because you got there somehow. You got into that interview or got into that realm somehow. Stay in connection, stay contacted and connected to those people. But I was a lifetime assistant that got a chance to be a coordinator and then a chance to be a head coach. And I was blessed because I was around great people that encouraged me to continue to challenge myself to be great and be better. And I'm trying to do the same thing with the people on our staff.
Okay. So how would your staff, and I'm not going to vote on this, how would your staff describe your leadership style? And how, if it has, how has it changed over the years?
Well, you could just answer that question and then I could listen and see how everybody perceives it.
This is a family show.
Exactly. It's not my. Yeah, I'll answer the question. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, a couple things I'd say. I hope they see my leadership style as open, as together, as I want input. And you've been around me on the same staff for going on 5 years, and we've known each other throughout different times, run into each other at conferences and stuff. I look at Connor Riley and I look at Brian Anderson, and Connor and I have been coaching together since 2012, and BA and I have known each other since the late 80s and early 90s, when I would go hang out with BA at conventions in different towns, and we'd have a couple drinks and just laugh and talk and get together with people. That I'm the same guy that was the assistant that is now the head coach. I know I've got to make tougher decisions, and I've got to do everything with the best interest of Kansas State football in mind, not with the best interest of Chris Klieman in mind. That although some of those decisions are maybe not what they want to hear, could be just as simple of a practice drill. I don't want to tackle today. We want a thud today, or whatever it may be. We're going to put on full pads, not half pads. That I want their input. And I want we've had some great conversations in our staff, because I throw things out there and want people to respond. I don't have all the answers, and I want people to have input, because we're going to do this together, and we all have ownership in this team. And our players, I know, believe that. Our players know that they could come to me at any time and say, Coach, can we look at doing something? And I hope our staff feels the same way.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, I'm going to beg to differ on that, because there's been many times it's been cold outside, and I voted. I voted 100.
Yep.
I voted 100%. Let's go to the indoor. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I don't know. I just get outvoted somehow.
I looked at Teamworks, and tomorrow morning we're outside. Did you know that?
Yeah, I'm going to have to figure out how to go into Teamworks and change all that. Right.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, you could call Coach True, but it's 8 o'clock and he's in bed now.
For sure. He was asleep at 6:45. I tried to talk to him earlier. So my final question, and this is always a cool one for people. is that, and you're a very young guy, but if you could go back and talk to the younger Chris Klieman about life, about how he handled himself, about the way he dealt with things, what would you tell that dude that you know now, that you wish you knew back then?
I would, and I talk to young coaches about this all the time. And you've been in this business as long as you have patience. That's the number one thing, is have patience and be where your feet are. And that's the one thing. I was around a guy by the name of Dick Mosley. You probably ran across him, and Dick Mosley was in the NFL for decades, and he happened to be the defensive back coach at Northern Iowa. And I was the GA that thought I should have gotten the full-time job at 24 years old. I wasn't ready for the full-time job, but I was like, man, that should be my job. I was the GA for 2 years. Dick Mosley came in he was in his early 60s at that time, I believe. And he taught me so much about the game of football. But most importantly, he came from the Green Bay Packers down to Northern Iowa. And he said, be where your feet are. This is the greatest job you have. Be where your feet are. Don't worry about what happens today or tomorrow or what happens yesterday. You work on today and be the best you can as a coach today. And take chances as a young person, as a young coach. And my wife and I bounced around a lot with our younger kids, but always looking for an opportunity to network and learn more. It's not like I was taking these huge pay raises and stuff. I was trying to network, but I was also patient in the fact of I didn't look for jobs. I had great opportunities where people would contact me and I'd say, okay, it was time for me to make a move. But it's so hard for young coaches to be patient because they want instant. It's our whole society right now wants instant gratification, instant success. And I would keep telling my younger self to continue to be patient and never look back and never look forward. Keep an eye on the prize that you're at right now, and that's the job you're in.
Right. Well, Coach, I we've been waiting, right? We've been waiting for a minute to get you home, and finally we were able to work you into your busy schedule. And I'm so excited to continue this process, to continue down to this path with you. Man, I look forward to watching you. I look forward to standing beside you, working with you for many more championships along the way.
Well, Van, I couldn't have done this without you coming here to K-State. You've been my confidant and in the room with me with a lot of tough conversations, and we've done a lot of great things together, and we're going to continue to do a lot of great things together. So I appreciate you having me.